Hello and welcome. I'm James Azimoha. You're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. The United States and Iran signed a memorandum of understanding, marking a major step towards ending the Gulf conflict. Azerbaijan and the Islamic Development Bank signed new major agreements in Baku. And Ukraine launches its largest drone attack on Moscow in 2 years. The United States and Iran have signed a memorandum of understanding at the G7 summit in France, setting out a framework to end hostilities and begin talks on a permanent agreement. The deal, confirmed by both sides, includes an immediate ceasefire across all fronts, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and the lifting of U.S. sanctions.
US President Donald Trump signed the Iran Memorandum of Understanding at the Palace of Versailles on Thursday at the G7 summit, just prior to a dinner hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron. Before Trump's statement, Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Esmail Baghaei had announced that a memorandum of understanding with the United States has been finalized and signed electronically by both sides.
The Iran-US Memorandum of Understanding is now officially complete and finalized, since it has been signed by both sides. The Farsi document is similar to the English one and was signed by the other party.
The memorandum includes an immediate end to the war on all fronts, including Lebanon, the full resumption of maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz, the lifting of a US blockade of Iranian ports, the waiving of US sanctions on Iran, the unfreezing of its assets, and a plan worth $300 billion for the economic rehabilitation of the Islamic Republic. Once implementation of the MOU begins, the US and Iran will start negotiations for a final deal. The document also states that the final agreement will be endorsed by a binding UN Security Council resolution. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said on X that the leaders of the US and Iran had signed the Memorandum of Understanding and, as a first step, Islamic Republic of Iran will instantly reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and the United States of America will immediately lift the naval blockade. The meeting between American and Iranian delegations, headed by Vice President Vance and Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, is still expected to take place as planned Friday in Switzerland.
Now, more details are emerging about the deal agreed by the US and Iran to end 3 months of conflict. One of Iran's state broadcaster has released the outline of the 14-point deal, which was signed remotely by Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian on Wednesday.
Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian added his electronic signature to the Memorandum of Understanding with the United States on Wednesday. Included in the 14-point document are the details of a 60-day ceasefire, which buys time for both sides to negotiate a final peace deal. It also includes a clause about Lebanon, which was a sticking point for Tehran during the negotiations. According to the text published by the IRNA state news agency, the document begins with a declaration on the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon. With a 60-day time period, the document also includes a point stating that it could be extended upon mutual consent. On Washington's part, it states that the U.S. will begin the removal of its naval blockade and complete it fully within 30 days. In return, Iran will ensure the safe passage of commercial vessels without charging tolls for 60 days, only from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman and vice versa. The document also states, according to Tehran, that the U.S. and regional countries will develop a plan for the reconstruction and economic project for Iran to the tune of $300 billion. Washington will also end all sanctions against Iran, including UN Security Council resolutions, IAEA resolutions, and all unilateral U.S. sanctions. According to the memorandum, Iran reaffirms that it will not procure or develop nuclear weapons. Both sides have agreed to resolve the issue of stockpiled enriched material according to a mechanism that will be mutually agreed upon. This will be supervised by the IAEA. In terms of energy sources, Washington has agreed to issue waivers for the export of Iranian crude oil, petroleum products, and derivatives, and all associated services. Additionally, the U.S. will release frozen or restricted funds and assets of Iran once the points of the deal are implemented. The last clause in the statement says that the final deal will be endorsed by a binding UN Security Council resolution, something Tehran has insisted on to ensure the U.S. holds up its end of the agreement. The chief negotiator for Iran, Mohammad Baqir Ghalibaf, who is also the Speaker of the Parliament, emphasized this point in an interview on the state TV network IRIB, saying the memorandum is based on the principle of reciprocity. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baqai also said Iran and Washington are working through Pakistani mediators on the date and venue for the beginning of the peace talks, so that they can start as soon as possible. Turat Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
Now, Lebanon has emerged as a key test of a new U.S.-Iran agreement aimed at easing tensions across the region. But with Israel, Hezbollah and Lebanon's leaders all signaling different positions, questions remain over how the deal will be implemented. Here's more.
Attention is focused on Lebanon after details emerged of a memorandum signed between the United States and Iran. The agreement calls for an immediate and permanent end to military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon, and says neither side should launch attacks or threats against the other. It also commits to respecting Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Meanwhile, Israel has not reacted to the signing of the peace deal, while a spokesperson for the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said any continuation of Israeli military operations in Lebanon would constitute a violation of the understanding. U.S. President Donald Trump, at the G7 summit in France on Wednesday, said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could use a softer touch in dealing with Hezbollah, reflecting Washington's concern that fighting in Lebanon could undermine the agreement.
You had a deal that was going to give them, legally, a nuclear weapon. And if that happened, Israel would have been blown away. And in all fairness to Bibi Netanyahu, who happens to be a good man, gets a little excited sometimes. But he happens to be a very good man. We've had an amazing partnership. He's been an amazing prime minister. We have a little dispute over Lebanon. I say, you can do a little softer touch, Bibi. You don't have to knock down a building every time somebody walks into it that's from Hezbollah.
Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem has rejected US-brokered proposals for pilot security zones, insisting any deal must guarantee reciprocal security. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu has fired back, insisting Israel is completely uncommitted to any US-Iran accord and reserves an absolute right to use military force. Lebanese leaders are expected to visit Washington in the coming weeks as negotiations continue towards a final settlement.
Now, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says Israeli settler groups could be added to a new UN blacklist over a rise in abuses against Palestinian children. The United Nations says violations against children in conflict zones reached a record level in 2025, with more than 14,000 children killed or injured worldwide. The Palestinian territories were the worst affected, with over 2,500 children reported killed or wounded in Gaza and dozens more in the West Bank. Now, Ukraine has carried out one of its largest drone attacks on Moscow. Russian officials say an oil refinery and several residential and industrial sites were damaged. The strikes came after a major wave of Russian missile and drone attacks on Ukraine, as both sides step up aerial assaults in the ongoing war.
Ukraine launched a major drone offensives on Moscow in an attack that damaged a key oil refinery, sparking fires and sending debris falling across parts of the capital region. Moscow's mayor Sergei Sobyanin and Russia's state news agency said it was one of the largest Ukrainian drone attacks on the Russian capital in recent years. Sobyanin said air defences shot down at least 194 drones targeting the capital overnight into Thursday. In the wider Moscow region, a high-rise residential building, an industrial facility and several private homes were also damaged, according to authorities. The strikes followed a major wave of Russian ballistic missiles and drone attacks on Kyiv, marking a further escalation of the air war between the two sides. Authorities in the northeastern Ukrainian city of Sumy said one person was killed in a drone strike, while air raid alerts were issued across much of the country.
Let's talk to Gregory Matthew, political analyst, joining us from Stockholm, Sweden. Good to have you. Now, how significant is this reported shift in President Trump's attitude towards Ukraine, and could it translate into lasting policy change?
It is significant, but not yet structural, I would say. It is significant because it's a change of tone, but not necessarily a change of doctrine. And we will have to see in the coming weeks and days how it is transformed into practical issue. The fact that Mr. Trump now authorized sustained deliveries, license funding, and sanction follow-up is key. It's 20 minutes conversation, but probably Mr. Trump will have other conversation in the future with Vladimir Putin, more than 20 minutes, and the shift can be reshifted.
Now, do the new air defense commitments represent a genuine strategic upgrade for Ukraine, or are they primarily a political signal of support?
As I just said, it is strategic if it's implemented. For the time being, it's, let's say, only words on paper, and it needs to be transformed into reality on the ground. Of course, it responds to an urgent need for Ukraine because, as you just reported, there are constant attacks on both sides, and more drones and missiles are launched to each other. So for Ukraine airspace, it's very important to have better and new improved system of defense.
Now, having said that, how much pressure can the G7 realistically place on Russia at this stage of the war, given existing sanctions and diplomatic measures?
Well, G7, if you calculate correctly, 6 of them are NATO members. So I think it is significant. The pressure is on several directions. The military pressure, and we spoke about it in the situation in Iran, to come to the negotiation table with increased military pressure helps you to make your point. But also the sanctions, also there are multiple factors that are to be implemented to put the pressure. Now, in the Kremlin, this can possibly be perceived also as another proof that the Western world is united against Russian interests.
Now, what does Germany's description of the joint statement as a real success tell us about the current state of Western unity on Ukraine?
Germany is happy because it kind of indicates that Trump is back. Trump is back with us in the family of NATO, and he's committed to be at our side. But again, these are words after 3 days of conversation at G7. This is a joint statement and the first of its kind. A joint statement is usually the minimum that you can expect after such exchange. So it needs now to be transformed and materialized into practice.
Now, going back to what you said about them thinking that Trump is back, are we now seeing a broader shift in the Trump administration's approach to European security, or is this a Ukraine-specific development?
I would frame it as a Ukraine-specific development because you are aware that, for example, Anthropic is one of the biggest AI tool, and it is now forbidden. The US government has written a letter to Anthropic not to share their technology with Europe for, they say, security issue for the US. So it depends. When it aligns with US interest, it is good. When it doesn't, US definitely, I mean, Trump MAGA is America first, and Europe is, as it is explained in a very clear document, it is a partner, but not longer an ally.
Now let's go back to the G7. Why was the G7 able to reach a joint statement on Ukraine now, when previous summits under Trump struggled to achieve consensus?
Maybe because Trump's skepticism about the situation in Ukraine has moved to some kind of, I would say, and better understanding. I think that Mr. Trump is genuinely impressed by the resilience of Ukrainians. And let's not forget one thing. When the situation in Iran and the Gulf developed, Mr. Zelensky made a trip in the region, and he was able to profile Ukraine as a solution provider to fight against drones, etc. So it may also be some actors in discussion that were not at the G7 to say, but Mr. Trump, these people, they are with us and we need them.
Now, how important are additional interceptors and long-range assets compared with Ukraine's other military needs on the battlefield?
Well, in a war, airspace is key. And if you don't have the control of your airspace, then it's lost in advance. So these systems are essential. Now, after also 2 months of war in the Gulf, I'm not very much aware of the stock available. I mean, the US, they launched and spent a lot of their ammunition in the region there. So now, as I said, we have to see on the ground what will be indeed delivered to protect the airspace of Ukraine. But at the same time, Ukraine has shown capacity to develop its own and sometimes from scratch capacity, notably with their drone system now. So it would be a combination of material supplied from outside and domestically produced solution that would make the airspace of Ukraine better secure. I'm speaking from Sweden, and Sweden has in May decided to provide Gripen aircraft to Ukraine. Sweden is very supportive of the efforts in Ukraine. They are not part of the G7, but they are now part of NATO, as Finland has become part of NATO, and these countries are very committed to support Ukraine.
Now, finally and quickly, briefly as well, what should we watch out for to determine whether these G7 commitments become meaningful action rather than summit diplomacy?
That's the key, and the follow-up. The same could be said about the deal on Iran. Now they have 60 days to achieve another agreement on the nuclear capacity of Iran. So everything is in the detail, and we will see with time what can be indeed delivered. But it is important for Ukraine that those words are followed by concrete measures on the ground.
That was Gregory Matthew, political analyst, joining us from Stockholm, Sweden. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Now we'll continue with the main stories of the day after a short break. Stay with us.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back to A News. Now, the head of the International Energy Agency says the Iran war has changed how energy markets view the Strait of Hormuz, even as oil prices fall following the interim agreement between Tehran and Washington.
The agency welcomed the agreement and called for the strait to be reopened without conditions. Speaking in Istanbul, IEA Executive Director Fatih Birol said several countries are reviewing their energy policies following the conflict. He said the crisis had redrawn the global energy map and highlighted the importance of trust in energy markets. The agreement includes Tehran reopening the Strait of Hormuz and the United States lifting its naval blockade of Iran, a move that could bring an end to what the IEA describes as the largest oil supply disruption in history.
The vase is broken. What does it mean? For years, while we were debating whether the Strait of Hormuz would be closed or not, it is now broken. From now on, there is no possibility of bringing that vase back together with glue. Markets and all actors, producers, consumers, know that once it was closed, it can be closed once more.
Meanwhile, markets reacted positively to the agreement. Brent crude fell 2.1% to $77.86 a barrel, while US crude dropped 2.5% to $74.90. Investors welcomed the development, although analysts said uncertainty remains over how the agreement will ultimately be implemented.
Now, major agreements were signed on the third day of the Islamic Development Bank annual meetings in Baku, securing funding for reconstruction and development projects in Azerbaijan. The deals include support for the Karabakh Irrigation Canal and a new investment roadmap aimed at expanding cooperation between Azerbaijan and the ISDB. Here's more from Leila Rahimli.
We've just wrapped up day 3 of the ISDB annual meetings here in Baku. This morning we witnessed President Ilham Aliyev and ISDB President Muhammad Al-Jassir oversee the signing of 3 massive agreements during the official opening ceremony. Let me break down exactly what was locked in today, because these deals are a huge deal for the country. First, Azerbaijan secured a framework credit and grant package specifically for reconstructing the Karabakh Irrigation Canal. This is a milestone because it brings global Islamic finance directly into rebuilding the liberated territories. On top of that, a new memorandum of understanding was signed with the Ministry of Economy, which acts as the official strategic roadmap for all future investments between the bank and Azerbaijan. So that's all for now. We'll keep you covered as more updates come through. Reporting from the ISDB forum in Baku, I am Leila Rahimli, together with our camera operator Ilkin Mehdiev for A News.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says NATO must return to its role as a strong military alliance, stressing that Washington will be clear about its expectations for the bloc. Speaking at a meeting of NATO defense ministers in Brussels, Hegseth called for a renewed alliance capable of deterring future threats. His remarks come after the United States informed allies it would reduce its role in providing certain military assets for NATO operations. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said other members are stepping up to cover the gaps.
NATO 3.0 is post-Cold War recognition that it needs to go back to a real hardline military alliance that has real military capabilities capable of deterring right here on the continent and taking the lead for the conventional defense of Europe.
So what the US has announced already before is that they had to lower somewhat their contribution to the NATO force model. The question yesterday came up, is this immediate or not? It is immediate. However, why I'm a little bit reluctant to say this is because it is a planning tool. So what would happen in reality if war would break out? Let's assume that an Article 5 situation would emerge. Then all allies, including the US, will max out what they can do.
Now, European Union leaders are meeting in Brussels for a two-day summit dominated by discussions on Ukraine, economic pressures, and wider global security challenges.
European Union leaders gather in Brussels for a two-day summit set against the backdrop of the ongoing war in Ukraine and mounting global economic pressures. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to join talks on the evening of June 18th as leaders review support for Kyiv and outline the next steps in its EU accession process. Ukraine will remain a central focus, with leaders assessing progress following the opening of initial accession negotiations. Discussions are also expected on continued pressure on Russia, including sanctions policy, measures targeting its maritime networks, and preparations for a new package of restrictions. Beyond the war, leaders will turn to Europe's economic outlook, with competitiveness, energy costs, and wider global trade tensions high on the agenda. Concerns over market imbalances and unfair competition from major global players are expected to feature prominently. Negotiations will also move forward on the European Union's next long-term budget, with a first draft framework from the rotating presidency guiding discussions aimed at securing an agreement later this year. Security and defence will be another key focus as Europe prepares for the upcoming NATO summit, with emphasis on military readiness and strengthening the eastern flank. Leaders will also review developments in the Middle East, alongside migration policy implementation and efforts to tackle illicit drugs across the bloc. The summit runs from the 18th to the 19th of June.
Now, the European Parliament has adopted one of its strongest assessments yet of political developments in Georgia, raising concerns over democratic backsliding, political repression, and the country's stalled path toward European integration. Our correspondent, Nini Nikolashvili, has more.
The European Parliament has delivered a strong assessment of developments in Georgia, adopting one of its strongest resolutions yet on the country. The resolution calls for the immediate release of what lawmakers describe as political prisoners, including former President Mikhail Saakashvili. It also backs targeted sanctions against Bidina Ivanishvili, senior members of the Georgian Dream ruling party, and others they say are responsible for the democratic backslide. The report comes as relations between Tbilisi and Brussels remain strained following a series of disputes over democratic reforms. The EU says the continued democratic decline could further jeopardize its path toward European Union membership. It also puts at risk Georgia's visa-free travel regime with the EU. At the same time, lawmakers have underlined Georgia's strategic importance for regional connectivity. While stressing the country's key role in the middle corridor linking Europe and Asia, they argue that route's long-term success depends on adherence to the rule of law. The resolution also flagged the growing Chinese and Russian influence over infrastructure that is considered strategically important for East-West connectivity. Lawmakers also raised concerns about sanctions enforcement, warning that Georgian infrastructure could be used to help circumvent restrictions imposed Russia and Iran. Particular emphasis was placed on the Kulevi oil terminal and refinery on the Black Sea coast. The resolution also criticizes what it describes as growing Russian, Chinese, and Iranian influence in Georgia. The Georgian government has strongly rejected the resolution. Foreign Minister Maka Bacharishvili said that European Parliament resolutions are not legally binding and that this recent assessment is built on what she describes as false narratives aimed at damaging Georgia's reputation and national interests. She added that the report does not reflect realities on the ground and maintains that European integration still remains Georgia's strategic foreign policy priority. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Now, as the United States and China work to manage a complex relationship, technology policy continues to be a key point of focus between the two world's largest economies. From Beijing, here's Manu Makdum.
The United States has reportedly put on hold a proposal to add more than 100 entities on a U.S. trade blacklist. The companies include Chinese AI firm DeepSeek and memory chipmaker Chongqing Memory Technologies. Sources familiar with the matter said that the firms had been identified as a potential concern for national security. This mechanism of blacklisting companies falls under the U.S. Commerce Department, which can restrict access to American technology and products and require special government approval for exports. For now, those Chinese companies are safe from the blacklist, according to a report by Reuters news agency. The decision is reportedly being viewed as an effort to avoid adding new tensions to the US-China relationship at a time when both countries are seeking to maintain stability in their trade and economic ties. Technology controls have become a major area of competition between the two sides, particularly in sectors like artificial intelligence and semiconductors, where Washington has imposed a range of restrictions in recent years. DeepSeek has gained international attention for its rapid progress in AI development, while the chipmaker CXMT plays a key role in China's efforts to expand domestic semiconductor production. For now, the blacklist proposal has reportedly been postponed, but it hasn't been cancelled, which suggests that US policymakers are weighing the potential diplomatic and economic fallout of such a measure on Chinese companies. Manu Makdum, A News, Beijing.
Now, as Turkey and Central Asia are deepening cooperation on trade, transport and connectivity as officials meet in Ankara for a regional forum focused on the middle corridor linking Europe and Asia, Adamora reports.
Representatives from Turkey and Central Asian countries have gathered in Ankara for the Central Asia-Turkey Forum, a high-level event focused on strengthening political, economic, and strategic cooperation across the region. Discussions are focused on trade, energy, transportation, regional security, and the future of Eurasian connectivity. Particular attention is being given to the Middle Corridor, a multimodal trade route linking Central Asia and China to Europe through the Caspian Sea, the South Caucasus, and Turkey. The Middle Corridor has gained increasing importance in recent years as governments and businesses seek faster and more diversified alternatives to traditional transport routes. During a panel discussion devoted to the Middle Corridor, speakers stressed the importance of the South Caucasus, including Azerbaijan, in the emerging land route.
Without Azerbaijan, there is no link. So in that sense, Azerbaijan is the connecting not only Central Asia with Turkey, but Central Asia to Europe.
Forum participants also discussed opportunities for cooperation in logistics, digital transformation, infrastructure development, and energy security. The event comes at a time when Ankara is placing growing emphasis on its relations with the Turkic world and seeking to expand economic links with Central Asian partners. Attendees also exchanged views on Eurasia's rapidly changing geopolitical landscape and on ways to strengthen regional resilience and multimodal connectivity. Discussions also built on priorities identified at recent meetings of the Organization of Turkic States, where connectivity, trade, and economic integration have featured prominently. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Turkish capital Ankara.
Now let's talk to Associate Professor Dr. Shuai Achikalin from the Ankara Haji Bayram Veli University in Ankara, Turkey. Now, how important is Central Asia to Turkey's wider geopolitical ambitions?
Thank you very much. Of course, the Central Asia, one of the main components of the Turkish foreign policy for many years, but especially in last 5 years, it's a clear ambitious from the Ankara and also other capitals from Turkestan. It clearly shows that the integration and the deep cooperation in the different varieties of the political sectors and the dimension. And these events also show that this multi-dimensional nature of the relations as much as possible. And in this respect also clearly claim that geopolitical changes in the region and the world politics bring the Turkic world is much more important for not only the Turkey but also other members of the Turkic organization states.
Now, Turkey has strengthened its engagement with Central Asia in recent years. What is driving this momentum right now?
Well, this driving momentum can be considered as the three main points. One of them is, of course, the energy and energy security vis-a-vis the alternative routes from this region. Secondly, of course, transportation and economic dimension, which is also compatible with the other dimension as well. And the last one, of course, as I mentioned in the first question, geopolitical changes brings this region in a very visible hand in the world politics. So in this respect, not only the geopolitical reason, but also various reasons make the Turkestan region, which will be much more important for both regional actors and non-regional actors as well.
Now, the Central Asia +1 format has evolved into broader regional cooperation. How has this changed Turkey's role in Central Asia?
This changing and actually this strong emphasis within the member states also attract the third countries. What I mean is that not only the membership or the observer countries, but also other countries from the outside of the region turns to be much more interested cooperation with these countries and also Turkic organization states. And new model give the flexibility to Turkic organization states to make more meaningful and the fruitful cooperation with the third countries. And I think it's also open a new area to discuss the modality of the integration and the international organization cooperation for other regional organizations.
Now, connectivity is central to this relationship. Are transport corridors becoming the main driver of Turkey's Central Asia cooperation?
Of course, connectivity is the main core of what we discussed until now, especially regarding the energy, transportation and the economic dimension, because the position of the Turkestan region is directly connected to Asia, to the West, and it's also important to see that this connectivity, starting from the other part of the world, from Asia till the other part of the world, Western side. And in this respect, this connectivity is not only political, is not only economic, but it has also multidimensional structure, makes it more effective and attractive for the member states and other actors too.
Now, speaking about connectivity, the Middle Corridor has gained attention as an alternative trade route. What needs to happen for it to reach its full potential?
Well, there should be much more cooperation regarding to facilitation of these. Of course, the political cooperation, but as well as political cooperation, there is need to be revitalized all different parts of society to bring the much more meaningful and the long-term sustainable cooperation, and especially the economic and energy dimension. These also brings the different debates regarding the minerals and energy sources, and also even the green energy debates in both in the West and the Turkestan region. So overall, it can be said that if we want to be fully maximize the potential of the connectivity Middle Corridor, it should be focused on the deep integration between the member countries, but also good cooperation with the other regional actors.
Now, speaking about other regional actors, Azerbaijan is often described as a bridge between Turkey and Central Asia. How important is that role becoming?
Of course, when we look over, especially after the Second Karabakh War and the Azerbaijan, brotherly Azerbaijan, Trump, in this way, it became much more concrete and the visible way the Azerbaijan playing this a great role, and especially increasing importance in the Zengezur corridor and also other related trade routes and the energy routes makes these two countries not only a brotherly nation, but strategically also partnership in a brotherly level. And it also creates, of course, a kind of the positive energy within the other Turkestan region countries. And this synergy makes the Turkic States of Organization more integrated perspective, and their 2040 roadmap will be much more meaningful.
Now, finally, how does closer Turkey-Central Asia cooperation fit into the wider competition for influence across Eurasia?
Well, I can say it will be in the first priority, and it will be in the given the first rank. Why? Because right now, if you look over the changing dynamics in Middle East and also related regions, it could be clearly says that the other actors looking for the alternatives, and right now Turkey and the countries in the Turkestan region sitting just heart of these the geopolitical changing, and right now this positive political cooperation have a potential to make a positive dominant effect to other countries and as well as the other political areas.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing your time and insights with us.
Thank you.
Now, for all the sports news from the FIFA 2026 World Cup, here is Katie Wilson with Sports Hour.
Hi, I'm Katie Wilson and this is today's World Cup date. Starting off in the region, Uzbekistan's World Cup debut didn't go as many had hoped, with the White Wolves losing 3-1 against Colombia. But according to their manager Fabio Cannavaro, that doesn't mean they'll be feeling the pressure or taking their eye off the ball for the next two games.
For us, it's the first time in the World Cup. We are so excited to be here. We will try to do our best to make all Uzbekistan people around the world proud of us. The stage is tough, and I try to explain them that to be enjoy, because it's the first time we don't have nothing to lose, but it doesn't mean that we go just to be enjoy. And no, we know that we need a fight. We know we need to try to show the people how Uzbekistan football want to grow in the future.
But despite the result, the significance of this moment for football in Uzbekistan was not lost on many of the fans attending the match in Mexico City. Take a listen to this.
13 hours of flight just to see the match, and we are super excited because it's the first time Uzbekistan qualified for the World Cup, and it's actually first game in Mexico City, and we love the stadium. It's so iconic, and it's like very proud to be here to play the first match in the World Cup.
To another surprise result of the tournament now, as favourites Portugal were held to a 1-1 draw by the Democratic Republic of Congo, who returned to the World Cup after a 52-year absence. Thousands of fans gathered in Lisbon to watch Portugal's World Cup opener, but with the 41-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo unable to make an impact like Haaland, Mbappe and Messi, commentators like Thierry Henry said Ronaldo was being selfish by taking passes for himself when his teammates were in better positions to score. He said, "The team needs to score, not you." And finally, England's Three Lions rode to victory against Croatia with a 4-2 win in Dallas. After conceding twice in the first half, England went on to dominate after the interval, with Bellingham putting England back in front just minutes after half-time. So what exactly did manager Thomas Tuchel say to the players to ensure such a powerful second half? I'll let England's captain Harry Kane tell us more.
Yeah, he gave a great speech, to be honest, especially the way we conceded that second goal just before the half. He just told us to let the shackles off, calm down. What are we scared of? Let's just go. The way we conceded that second goal is not the team we want to be, dropping deep, waiting, and then conceding anyway. So he kind of just said, what's the worst that can happen? We lose a match, first group game, we get on with it, we move on. Let's just go and show kind of the world who we can be. And I think we've done exactly that second half.
That's your World Cup roundup for today. I'll be back at the end of the weekend with more results and reaction from the tournament. Stay tuned.
All right, after the break, we'll continue with the main stories shaping the region. Stay with us.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Welcome back to A News. Now, as artificial intelligence becomes increasingly integrated into daily life, questions are growing over how innovation can advance without compromising individual freedoms. Human rights officials and ombudsman representatives from around the world gathered here in Baku to explore possible answers to those concerns.
Artificial intelligence is advancing at a lightning speed, but is it leaving fundamental rights behind? In Baku, Azerbaijan, that question is now at the center of a major international response, as ombudsmen and heads of national human rights institutions from around the world have gathered for the International Baku Ombudsman Summit. The high-level forum brought together representatives from around 30 countries, representatives from the region including Azerbaijan, Turkey, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, as well as Pakistan, Oman, Moldova, Ukraine, and Zambia.
We live in the age of artificial intelligence. There are many areas in which it serves humanity, from healthcare and education to transportation, the economy, and even the legal field. People are able to benefit from the opportunities it provides. However, it also carries risks. These algorithms operate on data. The more data that is collected, the greater the potential threat to individuals' security. In particular, there are concerns regarding people's privacy and the protection of their private lives. If these technologies are not properly regulated, ethical issues may arise, and new legal challenges may emerge. In this regard, it is extremely important that this meeting has been held in Azerbaijan.
Opening sessions focused on the rapid rise of AI and its impacts on public administration and human rights. Delegates weighed both the opportunities and risks with particular attention on transparency, accountability, and the protection of individual rights. Alongside the main plenary, participants took part in parallel discussions on key issues including digital rights, data privacy and security, the future of work, and the growing need for digital literacy in the age of AI. During the event, several agreements were signed with the host country. The summit concluded with the adoption of the Baku Declaration, a framework aimed at guiding the ethical development of artificial intelligence and strengthening global standards on transparency, justice, and accountability.
ve əlaqələndirilmiş dəstəyi ilə geniş olduqca əhəmiyyətlidir.
What is even more important, the human rights standards are not so, let's say, static. They are live, dynamic, and if you want to have some more knowledge about the human rights and the possibility on how to deal with the violation of human rights, then we have to cooperate. Any kind of the cooperation, including the written memorandum on the cooperation, will take us to the new stage, let's say, in fighting against those who violate human rights, not only in our countries but all over the world. So the human rights institution has to do this. It is very good for the strengthening of our institution capacities, but also for the strengthening of all the members of our staff.
Notably, the opening day of the summit falls on June 18, which is the Human Rights Day in Azerbaijan, adding symbolic weight to discussions on the rights in the digital age. İlknur Seydamirova with Zohrab Shirinov reports from Baku, Azerbaijan.
Now, Pakistan is highlighting its role as a key mediator in the agreement reached between Washington and Tehran. Islamabad has described the deal as a diplomatic success and says further steps are now being taken towards its implementation. Miriam Zia brings us more.
Pakistan is moving to define its role as a diplomat in light of the successful mediation efforts between Washington and Tehran. The final agreement signed by both sides is known as the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, which is a testament to Islamabad's critical role. On June 18, Prime Minister of Pakistan Shehbaz Sharif said that the deal had been endorsed by Pakistan, describing it as an evidence of both sides' commitment to a diplomatic resolution of the conflict. In a series of statements posted on X, he thanked the leaders and officials involved in the high-level negotiations between US and Iran. He also acknowledged the contributions of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt. Sharif credited Pakistan's military chief, Asim Munir, as a key facilitator of the final breakthrough. President Asif Ali Zardari described the development as a historic moment and said that Pakistan had maintained a principled, balanced, and constructive role throughout the crisis. Pakistan's Foreign Office has dispatched a delegation to Switzerland for the next phase of talks, while officials also point to the diplomatic outreach and international recognition of Islamabad's efforts as implementation of the agreement begins. Mariam Zia, A News, Islamabad.
Now, the Caspian Sea continues to shrink, raising concerns over the future of one of the world's most unique ecosystems. In Kazakhstan, lawmakers are now calling for a single digital map of the coastline after parts of the shore retreated by up to 35 kilometers in less than 2 decades. A correspondent reports from Almaty.
The Caspian Sea is the world's largest inland body of water, but its future is at risk. Parts of its shoreline have receded by up to 35 kilometers over the past 2 decades. Official data show that water levels along Kazakhstan's coast continue to decline. The northeastern Caspian now stands at around minus 29 meters below the Baltic reference level. One member of parliament is now calling for a unified system to track changes along the coast. He says because existing government records do not reflect the sea's actual boundaries. The proposal would involve a single digital map to track the reality of the situation, which includes a number of ecological challenges. The retreating shoreline is creating problems with regard to land management, natural resource development and investment projects. It's also raising concerns about the region's fragile ecosystem. Environmental pressures have become increasingly visible. Since April, dead Caspian seals have repeatedly been found along Kazakhstan's coast. Last autumn, nearly 2,000 seal carcasses washed ashore in one of the largest incidents recorded in recent years. The proposal for a digital coastline tracking system would collect satellite, hydrological and geodetic data and establish a coordinated response mechanism for mass death of seals, fish and birds. And if something isn't done, scientists warn the Caspian could lose another 3 to 5 meters of water by 2050. And that could affect millions of people across the 5 countries that share its coastline and put additional pressure on an ecosystem already under strain. Arisa Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Okay, that's the news for this hour. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.